Let's go to a different team for a second, but this is just kind of fascinating because it involves a star in the league, Pete Alonso, the polar bear, right? The guy that hits a bunch of home runs. No one loves the home run derby more than Pete Alonso, by the way, too. Interesting comments from the new authority in New York with the Mets about Pete Alonso's potential re-signing or lack of with the Mets moving forward. So let's play that, Brad.
Pete Alonso, you said essentially to focus on this season. Mm-hmm. Do you anticipate not discussing with him a long-term deal until next offseason, or was that going to be broached before the season?
I think that's probably the most likely outcome. We're not going to get into the specifics of any particular negotiation. I'm not going to provide you guys updates on any conversations that exist back and forth. But look, when you have a really talented player who's really good, who's entering his final year of club control, who happens to be represented by Scott Boras, these things generally end up into free agency. And we understand that. This is an organization that's dealt with that before with really good players, and it's ended up in a perfectly fine spot. So, I have not seen Pete here yet, haven't talked to him here yet. But what we're going to talk about is, look, let's go out and have a great year together. You go out, have a great year. Let's have a great year as a team. And if we do that, we're both going to be set up, the organization and Pete, going to be set up very well going into the offseason.
That was like, let's push this under the rug and not worry about it. But Pete Alonso is actually not going to be a Met next year.
We're not going to talk. I mean, it's interesting. If you just let it out, we'll just conclude with talking about this after the season. We love, Pete's a great player, and we'll see how it works out.
Yeah.
But as soon as you drop Scott Boras, by the way,
that's all
funny.
he had to say. That's all he had to say. If we're being honest, all he had to say was, listen to the reporter. Listen, we tried, but Scott Boras refuses to let guys sign early, knowing that they can get market price and go see there. I think, I'm not going to lie, the first time I listened to that, I was like, what do you mean you're not trying to negotiate with your star player? And then he was like, he's got Scott Boras. And I was like, oh, yep, makes sense.
Yeah, it's like you had me at Scott Boras.
Yeah.
Is like what it was.
Is he the only agent in any sport, I feel like, that people, like the casual fan, it's like, oh, yeah, I know Scott Boras. Because
Rich Paul in the NBA is another one.
Mm-hmm.
But NFL-wise, I guess it's Rosenhaus is the one.
Rosenhaus, maybe.
Yeah.
And then so those are like the big three.
If you're a casual sports fan, it's Scott Boras, right? Like,
Right.
It's probably the only agent in all of sports you recognize the name.
You don't even have to say Scott. You just say Boras.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah. So, and also
money talk.
And also for Orioles fans, you guys want to guess who his clients are?
Sadly, I know.
You have Gunner.
And he's got Jackson.
He's got Jackson Holiday and Corbin Burns.
Yeah.
So if you guys think extensions are coming early, don't hold your breath.
Yeah.
Another one also is Juan Soto. So at least there's a positive. New York
Well,
Yankees,
Brian Cashman just came out and said that he said, well, there's nothing stopping Juan from hitting free agency next year. And, a big reason for that is Mr. Scott Boras. So there you go.
And what's going to happen. But if you really like a guy, you make an offer.
That's
and
right.
Scott gets the most for his players.
Yeah.
And then he gets a lot of money. It's
like what Mike Elias said. What was it earlier the offseason or last year about if they were working on extensions for Gunner? He was like, I call Scott every day. And he's like, I'm trying, but it takes two to tango. And Boras is not going to take a cheap deal just because his guy is, young and buying out years. He's going to take that chance and get a lot of money.
Which again, it's goes both ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
A guy like Corbin Carroll, it was like almost a discount. Ozzie Albies, Ronald Acuna Jr., when you think about what the production could be for some of these guys, but it's stability versus you're playing the long game. And in this case, the long game is hopefully maximizing your earnings, which Scott Boras has done a tremendous job. And all the players that we've mentioned, we all believe are going to cash out. They are some of the best players in the game of baseball today.